it's me, Margaret, and I'm here with another simple knit baby scrap hat, and we're calling this one the Saturn hat because of the rings that go around it. Now there's lots of different variations of this that you can do with copy what I did, or of course use your own imagination to come up with things. The key here is that I'm using garter stitch rows to create texture. You can even not worry about colors. Now here it is done with a 2x2 rib, and it's in one color. So the texture itself is what makes the pattern. Now these little hats are incredibly simple, and I do recommend this project for beginners. I have written it as an in the round pattern, or rather recipe. It's not an exact pattern per se, but I have written it in such a way that you would want to use double pointed needles or magic loop or something like that to do baby hats. Yes, this can be done in an adult size if you want to use your 16-inch circulars. But whatever, if you know how to do it in the round, you're ready to go. If you don't work in the round, if you tend to make hats flat, you can glance at this and figure out what rows you need to change here and there to make it come out right, because it is not difficult. Let me walk you through this pattern. Now I've provided a link to this printed recipe in the description box below where you can print it for free. But let's just walk through it real quick just to make sure there's no questions. Now I keep calling this a recipe, and that's because it's not a proper pattern. It doesn't take you through cast on to bind off, to, step by step through the whole thing. No, what I'm doing is giving you the tools to create whatever type of hat you may have in your mind, simply using some scraps. Now this design itself is relying on texture through garter stitch to create the interest, and therefore this contrast color thing, you don't have to do that. Even if you have just a little bit of one color, you still get the same design. You can see it clearly because of the texture. It's not dependent upon the color. Now the good thing about this is there's no fancy decreases to worry about. I do a little thing called quickie decreases that I've done in the end that gives you more of a gathered top up here. And these hats here that are pictured are the 6 months size, but it's important to know that this works for any size, and I'll guide you through that in a minute. Now the supplies you'll need are pretty basic. These are worsted weight scraps, and I'm using 4 or 5 millimeter needles, and I use magic loop for the most part. I've recently bought some 12-inch circulars that work great, but if you like DPNs or whatever, that's what you'll need, whatever you like working with for worsted weight. Tape measure or ruler is important here, and then of course you'll need your tapestry needle and your scissors. Now the amount of yarn, for example, these 6 months hats that I have done, they use about 32 grams of the main color and 2 to 3 grams of the contrast color. Now I don't have weight approximations for the other size, but knowing that can give you a good starting point for your own estimations. And here we are with the recipe. Now it's pretty simple. You cast on the desired number of stitches and work some ribbing. Now I have done both 1x1 and 2x2 ribbing, and I do these hats in 10 rows. Here's an example of a 2x2 ribbing, and here's an example of a 1x1 ribbing. So it doesn't matter, whatever you like, you do. Now you're going to knit for a few rows to create a bit of space above the ribbing before the pattern starts, and these hats are 5 rows. And what I mean by that is this right here. And in all the hats I did the ribbing, and then I did 5 rows before I started whatever pattern that I wanted to do. See, it's about 5 rows right there. Then that's when you do the pattern choice below, or use one of your own, whatever you want to do. Now I have given you instructions here showing you these hats. If you like this one, this is called pattern choice 1, and it's very simple. It's just garter stitch, and garter stitch, as you may know, is a row of knit followed by a row of purl if you're knitting in the round, and it gives you this little raised edge like this. This is pattern choice number 1. You can see it here with in a solid color, no contrast at all, and you can easily see the little Saturn rings. Here we've done it in the contrasting color like this, and essentially it's just 3 garter stitch combo rows. You've got a knit purl, knit purl, knit purl. And the pattern choice 2 is almost the same thing, and you can see that you do your garter stitch rows right here, and then it's separated by one row of knit in the main color. We're going to knit a row, purl a row in this color, and then I do one row of knit in the main color. Then I knit a row, purl a row, and I chose another color right here. And then we do one row of knit in the main color. And then we knit a row, purl a row in the contrast color like I did, or you don't have to, and finish off your hat right there. Pattern choice 3 is pretty much the same thing. We're just putting rows a little bit more space in between. You got your garter stitch rows right here, and they're separated by rows of main color straight knit. 3 rows, 1, 2, 3. This is knit a row, purl a row to get your garter stitch, and then there's 3 rows of straight knitting. Knit a row, purl a row, 3 rows of straight knitting, knit a row, purl a row, and finish your hat. Now back to the recipe. After I've completed the pattern choice, I just finish off the hat. I knit approximately a 1/2 inch to 1 inch below my desired hat height. And that is what this is for over here. This is my little chart that I use when I'm working with charity hats. Just as reference, I don't have the person near me that I'm knitting for, so I just kind of choose one of these and go to town. So for 6 months, which is what this is, I cast on 64 stitches. My desired hat height was 6 inches. So when I'm working, I'll stop at about 5.5 inches, maybe 5 inches, and I'll begin the quickie decreases. Now here's what they are. Your first decrease row is a knit 1, knit 2 together, and you repeat that all the way around. Your second decrease row is just knit 2 together all the way around. And then your third decrease row, you do the same thing. And then you're going to finish the whole thing off with, secure it with your tapestry needle and the whole shebang, like you always do. And here's what those decreases look like on the top. They're just kind of a gathered look. If I do just this, my dog is waiting for me to feed him. Sorry for that background noise. If you want to do this little quickie decrease, a 1/2 inch is plenty, I think, if you use worsted weight yarn. But sometimes, depending on the yarn, I may like to put a row of knitting in between each of these decrease rows. Just one row of straight knitting. If that's the case, then I'll stop at 5 inches or 1 inch below my desired hat height and do that. My point is, whatever you like, you can do when you have this recipe. It's not exact. Use a little different seasonings, so to speak, to create your desired look. And experiment. You never know. You might find something you like better that you'll do all the time, but you won't know until you try. So I think these turned out really cute, and I hope you enjoy experimenting with your scraps to see if you can make some Saturn hats. Thanks for watching. Bye. And one more thing. If you liked this concept, then you may like this video. And if you've been frustrated with Magic Loop, you may find something helpful in this one.